Hello, this is Michael Hogan, and I'm with Mo Clean Skies, and I am on the Real Talk Radio Network. And who is Mo Clean Skies? Well, we are an organization that has been formed to really look up at the environment and say, what is going on in our skies, right? What in the world are these streaks in our skies? Why is it that we can't have a good, beautiful, sunny day hardly anymore without seeing trails in the sky just completely covering the sky? And it doesn't happen all the time, but it happens enough to where we're like, enough's enough, right? Have you noticed this, folks? This is something that once you see it, you can't unsee it, right? Um, it's an issue that has to be addressed, and I didn't see very many people addressing it, especially in the state of Missouri. And I thought to myself, I said, I've got to do something about this. I've got to bring this to people's attention. I've got to uncover what exactly is going on in our skies. And so that led me on a mission. I actually have two bills in the House that passed committee in the legislature here in Missouri last or this year. I also have a Senate bill that passed committee as well. Unfortunately, our bills, we ran out of time before we actually made it through the process. But so I went from just a normal everyday citizen, not normal maybe, but just an average everyday citizen to pretty much political activist in no time, because I had to do something about this issue. And you know what? There's a lot of issues that I'm very passionate about, but this is one that seemed like there was a gap in not enough people aware, not enough people willing to do something. And I really think it is a super complicated issue that people are just not sure what to think about this, what to do, because there are conspiracy theories on one side that say one thing, and then there's people on the other side that say the absolute opposite and want to call those people crazies and, tin full hat wearing people. Well, here's the deal. Where am I at on this issue? I'm actually in the middle, where the truth is, right? Not because I'm a fence sitter. I'm not a fence sitter. If anybody that knows me knows that I'm very much not a fence sitter. I'm not lukewarm at all. And so I'm all in or I'm all out. And so here's the thing: there's always truth when somewhere, in in aspects of politics and our daily lives, there's going to be misconceptions. There's going to be people who deliberately try to mislead people on both sides, right? I mean, we should know this by now that, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, there's going to be false narratives everywhere. You got to really watch out, I'm a follower of Jesus, and he said, be careful about the deception that's coming. Deception. I'll tell you what, our world is completely filled with deception. And I tell you, we have to find and discover and protect the truth, right? We need to be, watch out for the truth and really protect it and defend it, right? So even if it means that what we thought was true, what we thought, if we find the truth, we have to speak out, even if it's something different than what we thought. Okay. So what is Mo Clean Skies? Well, this is an organization that I co-founded about a year and a half ago. I'm just an average everyday citizen here in Missouri. And I started to really get concerned about what I was seeing in the sky. Okay. What we visibly see in our sky is, it is absolutely concerning, and if you haven't noticed this, you will, because you can't unsee it, like I said. And so once you see this, you got a beautiful morning, and then, you start to see on certain days, you'll see, planes flying overhead. You'll see one, you'll see two, you'll see three, you'll see multiple ones that really start to cover the sky with these cloudiness, like these trails, what some people call chemtrails, right? And I won't disagree that they're chemtrails. Let me just explain. Chemtrail is a derivative from the word contrail, which is condensation trail. That's a common term that's used in aviation and atmospheric scientists understand all that. But then the word chemtrail came from that, where you say, well, these are chemical trails, right? And so the truth is, they're both. Okay. They are trails. They are condensation trails filled with chemicals. Okay. I'm going to explain this in detail because I have the whole thing to myself this weekend, where I normally have a guest speaker, but I thought, I need to explain a lot of things and really go deep into the explanation of what we're seeing and what we're actually trying to stop. So let me back up just a little bit. Let me explain that in a short time after I said I was going to do something about this, I started to work with Senator Moon in the state of Missouri, and I started working with a couple representatives, Representative Burt Whaley and Steve Jordan in the House, and I began to really push for legislation to protect us from the intentional poisoning of our skies, which does happen, folks. Let me explain that to you first, and that is basically we know for a fact that. And again, let me say this: I don't speak about anything unless I can prove it. Okay. Or I'll say, hey, I can't prove this. I can prove this. I can prove these things, and so anything that I say, I'm not a conspiracy theory nut, but I want the truth. And whatever I say, whatever you hear me say, I can prove in a court of law. In fact, how do I know how can you trust that? Well, I'm taking the federal government to court, and if I have to take them to court, I better be able to prove facts, right? I can't just go in and spew a bunch of conspiracy theory stuff. I have to prove what I'm saying, right? Same thing in the state of Missouri and all states, right? That we have, when we go to the legislator, we need to have facts. So let me explain to you what we have in the state of Missouri. We're trying to ban geoengineering and weather modification. Okay, so geoengineering, that is where basically globalists and countries all over the world, okay, who have globalist agenda, which is basically climate change agenda, right? These are, you guys know very well, the people who are listening to me right now, you know exactly what I'm talking about when you say climate change agendas, because these are people who think that they have to intervene in our climate in order to save mankind. They say that. I don't know if they even believe it or not, but they certainly do use it to scare everybody and to try to get rich off of it, try to get all the power given over to them. It's just a globalist thing, just like the jab and all these other things that they do to try to get us to give them everything that we have, like give them our power, give them our money, and say, oh yes, you must save us, because these people don't believe in God. They think they are God. They want to play the role of God. Anyway, okay, so climate change agenda people who want to say, well, we have to cover our sun, we have to block the sun, and we have to do this or else. And so how do they plan to do that? They plan to spray our stratosphere with toxins like sulfuric acid, which is sulfur dioxide, into the stratosphere, high up in the stratosphere, to basically coat our stratosphere with these toxins in order to reflect the sunlight back in outer space. You think I'm crazy? Well, this is stuff I can prove in a court of law because it comes right out of our own government. Okay. I can show you, I can just bring the goods straight out of the horse's mouth. Okay. And not just our government, but all governments across the globe, because these are people who, sit down at the Paris Climate Accords and the World Economic Forum, and they fly their big fancy jets and pollute the sky. Just hypocrites, right? They make me sick. And so, but they're the ones that say, oh, we must intervene or else we're doomed. And so, goodness, if they're the solution to this world, we're all in trouble. But they're not God, and God's got this covered. What we need to do is protect ourselves from these people, from these crazy people who have these ridiculous plans to mitigate what they call climate change. And we have to have laws to say, no, you can't do that, because we don't. We don't have laws. Believe it or not, we don't. Now, we do have 3 states that have actually implemented laws, and that is Florida, Tennessee, and Louisiana. And we're hoping Missouri will be next. We made it a long way. We passed the Senate committee this year. We also passed the House committee this year, but unfortunately ran out of time before the session ended. But we are focusing on that. So that is one thing that we are we're attacking at the state levels, but what are we taking to the federal level? I'm going to talk to you more about this on the next segment because we're running out of time on this one. But we are taking the fight to the federal government, to the EPA and to the FAA, because listen, folks, the trails that we visibly see in the sky, that's not coming from stratospheric aerosol injections. That's actually coming right out of commercial aviation and pretty much any plane that's flying in the troposphere, lower in the cruising altitude. So I'm going to we're going to do a deep dive on that. So stay with us because we have a break coming up. See you on the next segment. Hello, my name is Michael Hogan, and I'm with Mo Clean Skies, and I'm on the Real Talk Radio Network. And it's an honor to be here. I do want to say thanks to Jones Home Improvements. If you go to joneshi.com, those guys over there, Kelly Jones and Rob Workman testified for us in the House and the Senate committees to protect and to try and help us pass those bills. Because he has a personal story about his own health impacts that have happened due to geoengineering projects, including, the radiation, electromagnetic radiation stuff. And we're getting really deep into that. But I tell you what, these guys have, they support us because they believe in what we're doing. It's not because they're trying to get advertising, but they're going to get advertising. So, because that's how it works. But thank you guys. Appreciate you guys. Go to joneshi.com for your home improvement needs. They do all kinds of things. Anything you need at your home, decks or windows or any kind of thing that you need improved, call them up, check it out, joneshi.com. So guys, we talked about earlier in the last segment that what are we doing to try and protect our skies from geoengineering, weather modification, and just pollution that's happening in our skies that's creating haziness, like it's aviation induced cloudiness, right? Well, I talked a little bit earlier about what we're doing in the state of Missouri to try and ban things like geoengineering, which is where globalists and really our governments that are saying we must intervene in our climate or else global warming is going to kill us all. And they're saying that we have to, in order to do that, in order to mitigate that, we're going to have to basically spray sulfur dioxide in the sky, kind of like a what do you call it, volcano. You know how a volcano, that's what they use. I'm not kidding you guys. This is true. They use the example of Mount Pinatubo that happened and it erupted in the Philippines back in the 1990s, right? And they're saying, look, we noticed when we studied the effects of Mount Pinatubo, which, by the way, me and you, we say that's not good. We don't want to, that's very toxic to the environment. There's nothing more toxic to our ozone and to our environment than a volcanic eruption. My goodness. And yet they see that as a good thing. They're like, only psychos, like only crazy scientists mad scientists would actually say, oh, that's good. We need to mimic that. We need to make sulfur dioxide. We need to spray that into the stratosphere, and sulfuric acid will just cover the sky and it'll block out the sun. I'm not kidding, folks. This is a fact, and I can prove this in a court of law. That this is happening. This is an agenda that's going down, and we must say no to this. Okay, we have to have laws to protect ourselves from this, which is crazy, right? Crazy to even imagine this, but that's what we're doing at the state level. We're trying to say we can't, we want all 50 states to say, no, we won't allow this crap. We won't allow you to do this in our atmosphere. This is our air, okay? We don't have clean air to breathe. It's over, game over, right? If we don't have clean food to eat, it's game over. So we must protect these things. And so that's what we're doing at Mo Clean Skies at the state level, to protect ourselves from these globalists who want to poison our stratosphere. Okay. So the other thing we want to protect as well, and these are part of our bills, we want to stop cloud seeding and any kind of weather manipulation, because, you've noticed that our weather has changed, right? You've noticed that Uh, and it's not from climate change. It's from people who are changing our weather. They're doing these crazy things with technologies. And actually, cloud seeding has been going on for decades, right? Since before the Vietnam War. It was used in the Vietnam War. Lyndon Baines Johnson used weather warfare. These are things I can prove. I just show you the video of him talking about how if we can, those one who can control the weather controls the world. He said that at a speech that he gave at Texas State University, and it was West Texas State, I think, at that point in time, and so, yeah, he said that, and he used that in Vietnam on what's called Operation Popeye to extend the monsoon season, basically spraying silver iodide into the clouds, into the monsoon, and to extend that along the Ho Chi Minh Trail to make it really, really hard for the bad guys to operate. Well, we had our guys over there too, right? We had our guys that had to deal with this and to had to go through all of these conditions. And let's not even start talking about, the Agent Orange and all the other garbage that they sprayed that was toxic, that affected our troops as well. And it's just, we can't trust our government. We can't trust anybody who's going to weaponize weather, right? So we're adding that. We're making sure that's part of our mission and our bills to stop, not just geoengineering, but also weather modification. We don't need that. We don't want our weather modified. You people who want weather modification, you globalists, you scientists, whoever, politicians, you're not God. Listen, we believe in God. We believe that God has this under his control. He doesn't need your help. Okay. We don't need your help. We know that you don't believe in God, but one day you will. One day you're going to wake up and you're going to rue the day that you never put your faith in him. You really will. And eternity is a long, long time. But listen, right now we're going to step in your way, right? We're going to be the ones that say no to this, because this is our air. This is our weather. Leave it alone. Okay. So that's the other thing we're talking about. So let's talk a little bit about this trails that we see in the sky, which is absolutely different than the first two things that I mentioned. That's what's going to surprise you folks. And I'm going to talk more about this on the next segment, but the surprising part is that even though this is what the trails in the sky that we see, that's what got me into this. And I was thinking, because I went down the rabbit trail saying, oh, they're spraying us, right? That plane that I see right there in the sky, it's spraying me out of pumps and pipes to block out the sun. When I got my own flight trackers, because I have to prove these things in a court of law, and I have to prove these things before legislators, and I have to do these things. So I can't just come in and say a whole bunch of garbage if it's not true. So I'm coming in with facts. Okay. So I got my own flight tracker app, which is really simple. Everybody can do. You can go and download one. And I started to track every trail that I saw in the sky, and 100%, not 99%, but 100% of the trails that I saw, I did, maybe 100 flights, 100% of them were commercial airlines. So I'm like, what? Whoa. This is not what I thought. When I started looking at all the documentaries about geoengineering and people who apparently are deceiving us on this and making money off of it, apparently. But it's still an issue that needs to be addressed. Okay. The issue is that these planes, the commercial airlines, are the ones that are responsible for creating the trails in the sky. We're going to talk more about this on the next segment, so stay with me, because you don't want to miss this, because this is so important to, if we're going to stop something this big, we better know what we're talking about. So stay with us. We'll see you right back.
Little things I should have said and done.
All right, I'm back. This is Michael Hogan, and I'm on the Real Talk Radio Network, and I'm with Mo Clean Skies. And we've been talking today about, geoengineering, weather modification, and also trails in the sky that we see. Some people call them chemtrails. Some people call them contrails. And, what I said before in the segments beforehand, I'm only interested in provable facts, things that I can prove in the court of law. And so if you're hearing me talk, you're not hearing only conspiracy theories. You're not hearing one side or the other. You're actually hearing the truth that's somewhere in between. Okay. And it's things that I can prove. I have evidence. I am actually taking an organization that I have co-founded called American Clean Air Coalition. We're taking the federal government to court potentially. We're going to go after the EPA, and we've already sent them a petition for rulemaking. We're following the guidelines to say, here's what you must do in order to fix the trails in the sky. And we're the only ones that have the solution to this, folks. Listen, this is extremely important that we get this right. And so because of these things, I'm actually able to tell you, to prove what I'm saying is true. Okay. And that is, when I first started this organization, I saw the trails in the sky, and then I looked it up, and I thought, oh my gosh, there's their chemtrails, and they're spraying us out of nozzles and pumps and pipes. They do spray, in order for solar radiation modification. That is true to the extent that they do spray out of planes sulfur dioxide to block the sun. That's the plan anyway. It really hasn't been implemented that much. In other words, I thought when I started looking up at the sky and I started seeing planes that look like they're spraying, it's easy to make that correlation to go, oh, that's it. Those are chemtrails. Those are pilots that are nefarious, that are looking down at me and going, spray him, spray all over. And it turns out that those are commercial airlines. So I'm thinking, wait a minute, a commercial pilot is involved in this? And I thought, no, I've got to look into this. And again, if I'm going to prove this in a court of law, I need to know the facts. So here are the facts, folks. 100% of those ones that I studied happen to be commercial airlines. And I'm talking about, it might be Delta, it might be United, it might be FedEx, or it might be DHL, or I call all that commercial airlines. Now, it could also be a military plane, pretty much any jet that's flying in the troposphere. Let me explain to you. You remember I mentioned earlier that there's such a thing as stratospheric aerosol injection. That's when the globalists want to spray the stratosphere to block out the sun. That's a fact. And that's what we want to stop at state level, to say, no, you can't fly over Missouri and do that kind of thing. You also can't, do any more weather modification in the state of Missouri, like cloud seeding and things like that. But the planes that we see that are leaving streaks across the sky, those are in the troposphere. Okay. That's not stratospheric aerosol injection because it's in the troposphere. Let me explain the difference. The stratosphere is miles and miles and miles in the sky. You can't even see a plane in the stratosphere. You can't. And so, but the troposphere is cruising altitude for most planes, right? So most airlines are going to be flying at around 20 to 35, 40,000 feet. That's the troposphere. Okay. So these are planes that are just going from point A to point B. Okay. Like I can, in my flight tracker, I can track and say, okay, this plane that I see above my head right now is going, that looks like it's spraying the sky. It's going from Dallas to Chicago. I get a lot of those over my property, is Dallas to Chicago and vice versa. And I can tell where it took off, when it took off. I can tell you the tail number, the name of the company. I can tell you where it's going to land and what time. So yeah, I can do that in real time on my cell phone, on my smartphone. And so the question is, okay, what is going on then? If that's a Delta plane, for example, that just took off from Dallas and is landing in Chicago, and it looks like it's spraying me with these particulates in the sky, is this stratospheric aerosol injection? The answer is no, it's not stratospheric aerosol injection. But so what is it then? That's where we got to go. Wait, I'm not going to just dismiss it. I still want to stop this. This is what got me into this in the first place. How many of you want to stop the trails that we see in the sky? And so here's the point. Here's the facts, okay? Why is it that we only see the trails on certain days and certain days we don't? Because those commercial planes are still flying across you every single day, right? The flights that go from Dallas to Chicago over my head, that happen every single day, right? Probably at the exact same time, depending on their schedules and things like that. And so, but one day I see it, one day I don't. That's what I had to really find out. Like, what is going on there? Why is it one day? Are the pilots involved, and are they all pushing the button at the same time, saying, "Oh, today's a spray day," or not? So something else must be going on. So I started doing some deep dives into atmospheric science and things that meteorologists look into, and the claims that are on the other side to say no, those are just water vapor, that's just normal contrails. And I'm like, no, it's not normal, it's not just water vapor, it has to be something else. And here's the deal. There is truth to the fact that yes, when that the contrails form, okay, when a contrail forms out of a plane, what happens is planes have these hot emissions, right? The hot engine flies through. When they fly through ice supersaturated regions, so only on certain days will the atmosphere conditions in the troposphere be wet and cold enough to actually create these trails. Okay, so there are days that, and I don't care, it doesn't matter what the temperature is on the ground. Like right now, it's going to be almost 100 degrees here where I'm at, and yet I'm already seeing trails in the sky. So in other words, in the troposphere, it's super, super cold, regardless of what it is on the ground. And that's just atmospheric science. Okay. So, science doesn't care about your feelings. So let's just keep on the track of, let's remember that. So, so on certain days, when the conditions are right, and I can actually pull up the conditions and show you, I can actually tell you when you will see, when and where you will see these trails, no matter where you're at in the world. Okay. And how could I do that? Because I can track the conditions, and I can say, hey, if you're in, Seattle, Washington, or wherever you are, let's just say, maybe you're in St. Louis, Missouri. I can say, okay, today you're going to see trails all over the sky. Or I might say, today you're not going to see trails in the sky, because based on the conditions that I'm looking at. Okay. So the conditions again is if it's really wet and cold, that's called an ice supersaturated region. So when there's a region in the sky that a plane that has a hot engine flies through, it creates these condensation trails. Now, what is it that's making these trails persist? That's the issue. It is chemicals. Okay. So again, you got the contrail people on one side, you got the chemtrail people on the other side. And the facts are, yeah, they're contrails filled with chemicals. So however you want to call it, it's semantics, right? But here's what happens. The emissions, the fuels are filled with the same stuff that they want to spray in the stratosphere. What is that? Sulfuric acid, sulfur dioxide, high levels of sulfur dioxide, and also other particulates like soot, black carbon. There are metals, aluminum, barium, strontium, all those things coming out of emissions as well, just from the wear and tear of the engines. But by and large, the biggest thing that's coming out of these emissions is the sulfur dioxide. And what happens is this pollution that's coming right out of the hot engine, and it becomes the nuclei that the ice crystals form around. You see, you will not see a contrail or any evidence of that in the sky, no matter what conditions are, if you don't have some kind of particulate matter for the ice crystals to form around and basically create a cloud, right? That's again, atmospheric science 101. And so what's coming out of the emissions, okay, like let's just take sulfuric acid, sulfur dioxide. Sulfur dioxide, when it's released in the atmosphere, turns into sulfuric acid. So when these high levels of sulfur dioxide are coming out right out of the emissions, that all those little particulates, and let's just say it's, sulfur dioxide, it's also metals, and it's black soot, black carbon, which is soot. These things are creating an environment where these trails are appearing. The ice crystals are forming around these particulates in huge levels and high levels, and basically persisting into clouds. And even the meteorologists call them cirrus clouds. So cirrus clouds are being formed by planes. Okay. Not all cirrus clouds, but if you ask your meteorologist, ask them, do cirrus clouds come out of planes ever? They have to say yes, or else they're just not being honest with you. They do, they are coming out of planes. And so this is what's called aviation induced cloudiness. This is not new to our federal government. This is not new to the science community. They know this. Okay, so that is a fact. Why is it different than when we were kids? Things like that. It's because of the amount of traffic. The airline traffic has increased substantial. There's 100,000 flights per day now, and this particulate matter, this poison that's ending up in our atmosphere. And again, these guess what the globalists want to spray in the stratosphere? The same stuff: sulfuric acid, sulfur dioxide. And so this stuff is coming right out of the commercial air emissions, and it's turning into aviation induced cloudiness, and it is blocking the sun. And now for the rub. Here's where it gets really crazy. I believe I can prove this in this court of law, that it's being used intentionally by the FAA and the EPA to do the same thing that stratospheric aerosol injection does. Because let me give you an example. In Mexico, right? Mexico banned geoengineering for the entire country. Isn't that great? But the head scientist that is for pushing geoengineering, which is the spraying of the stratosphere of sulfur dioxide, he commented on that and said, you can't do that. You can't ban geoengineering because the sulfur is coming right out of every commercial flight every single day, all day long, all the time. And so he laughed, and he knows that the aviation industry is being used as a form of climate change mitigation. In other words, they don't want to fix it. They don't want to stop this stuff coming from out of the emissions. They want to continue on it because they have a climate change agenda, right? Who's they? Our governments, all of the governments, right? Every government in the whole world, with their Paris Accord, they're looking for carbon credits. Everything has to do with carbon credits, and how can we, look good in the eyes of the world, and hey, we're using the aviation industry to accomplish this mission. You don't even have to spray the stratosphere, which they plan to do that a lot. Still, they're going to add 100 million tons of this stuff a million tons a year in the stratosphere, in addition to what we already have up there. And Dr. David Keith is on record, on video, multiple times saying that, yes, that will kill tens of thousands of people every year. And he laughs about it, saying, well, we're hoping that it'll save more than it kills. These are crazy times we're living in, folks. I hope that you understand what I'm saying. There's a lot to this. I understand it's why it's so confusing, but the bottom line is we want all of it to stop. The Mo Clean Skies exists because we want to clean up our atmosphere. We want clean air to breathe. We want clean food to eat, because all this stuff comes down to our food, to our soil, to our water. We want it all cleaned up, and we are demanding that it be so. So stay with us. I'll see you on the next side. Hello, it's Michael Hogan, and I'm with Mo Clean Skies, and I'm on the Real Talk Radio Network. And big shout out to Kelly Jones and Jones Home Improvement, joneshi.com. Go check them out. If you have any home improvement needs, go and call them or look them up, joneshi.com, and see what they have to say, because they are big supporters of us, and we really appreciate it. So, all right. So, folks, if you listened to our last segment, you heard a lot of stuff that's probably just blown your mind, okay? Because I'm talking about trails in the sky, okay? Some people call them chemtrails. Some people call them contrails. And the truth is, I'm only interested in the truth, okay? I'm not siding with one side or another unless I can prove it in a court of law, okay? And so when I say something, I'm going to prove it to you. I can prove these things in a court of law, okay? So the point, what I'm telling you is that they're both right and they're both wrong, okay? The trails we see in the sky have to stop. This is a major issue, okay? And we as the public have to get behind it, get on this. We have to stop this. And how do we stop it when all there's confusion? On one side they're saying one thing, and the other side they're saying another thing, and neither one are right. Let's come to the truth, folks. Let's find out how to fix this issue. Listen to me. I have a potential lawsuit with the EPA, where myself and several other organizations have formed an organization called American Clean Skies, or American Clean Air Coalition, and we are going after the EPA to demand that they do something. We know what's happening. We have the goods. We have the facts that we can prove in the court of law against the federal government. So let me tell you. Listen to what I'm saying here. What's happening in our skies with the trails, okay? It's not just condensation, and it's not just chemicals, okay? It's both, okay? The point is, when condensation trail happens, when a plane flies through, and this is what this is what you're going to hear for all the people who say, the naysayers, to say, oh, you're just tinfoil hat wearing person. But they say, well, it's just normal condensation. No, it's not normal. And there's nothing normal about the fact that you're covering our sky on an almost regular basis. And there's nothing normal or okay about that. Okay. But it is condensation in the sense that an engine, hot engine, okay, thousands of degrees probably, I don't know, flies through a ice supersaturated region. These are just these are atmospheric science. Okay, I'm telling you, explaining you what happens in our sky. No matter what temperature is on the ground, there are pockets of ice cold temperature, wet cold temperature. That's called ice supersaturated regions. Sometimes you have a large region over over you, and that's when you start seeing these trails. If it's dry conditions, that's when you don't see them. Sometimes you have a little bit of both, where it looks like a plane comes in and out and looks like they're spraying, turning on and off with the nozzle, but they're actually going in and out of these cold, wetty regions into dry pockets. So there's really not a question that you have that I can't answer. So if you have a question that I promise you I can bring the goods. So go to mocleanskies.org and send me your questions, because I can answer them. But basically, the commercial airlines are flying down in the troposphere around 20 to 40,000 feet. That's the trails that we're seeing, and they're by and large coming from commercial airlines. So when they fly through these ice supersaturated regions, the contrails come out, right? But here's what's different. Here's where those the deniers, the chemtrail deniers, are getting it wrong. They got it right when it comes to it's a contrail, but it's also a contrail filled with chemicals. So is it a chemtrail? Well, it's both. It's both. It's a trail full of chemicals, right? So where are the chemicals coming from? Are they spraying out of pumps and pipes? Well, they do that in the stratosphere, and they do, that's a different thing when it comes to solar radiation modification. Those are the planes that actually do work, and we have legislation to stop that. But we're talking about chemtrails right now, trails that we can actually see in the sky. So what's happening is the fuels have high levels of sulfur dioxide. And sulfur dioxide is something that covers the sky, and it can block the sun. And guess what? Globalists want to use that to block the sun in the stratosphere. So when these fuels are allowed, okay, my diesel truck, when I fill up with diesel at the pump, it tells me that I can. There's actually a sign on the pump that says this diesel is ultra low sulfur, right? And it says you can't. It has 15 parts per million maximum, right? That's the regulation from the EPA saying that you can't, that these fuels can't have more than that. And so when you look it up and you see what the limits are on aviation fuels, which is very similar to diesel fuel, okay? 3,000 parts per million. So why in the world would the EPA allow this to happen? Why are they allowing high sulfur in planes that are spraying our atmosphere, 100,000 flights per day? Why are they allowing that? I think, and I said in my last segment that I think it's intentional, because they have climate change agendas and they like it. They want these trails to persist. They want to use it for climate change mitigation, to lower the temperature and this and that. And so we have to fix this. We have to call it what it is. We have to point this out and say, look, We know you've been hiding this from the public. We know that you know this, and and now we know it. And guess what? We're telling the people this. We're explaining to the people what's going on. And what's going on is you're allowing these fuels to be laced with these high levels of sulfur dioxide and other things too, that are coming out of these emissions. And when these planes fly through these ice supersaturated regions, all of the garbage that's coming out of the emissions, these little particulates, they come out in nanoparticulates, right? Billions of nanoparticulates coming out. They all become the nuclei, basically the seed that the ice crystals form around, and that is what creates a persistent trail. You won't have a vapor unless you have a particulate matter that the crystals can form around, the water can form around. And that's just a fact. When they do cloud seeding, for example, when they spray clouds to make it rain, they're spraying silver iodide, and those little particulates go into the cloud, and the water droplets form around those little particulates, and that makes the rain drop heavier, and it drops into the earth. And that's how they're able to make a cloud produce rain. So particulate matter matters. And so what's happening is all this garbage coming out of the emissions is creating the nuclei that's creating the cloud. It's the aviation induced cloudiness when these planes are flying through certain conditions. That's why you see them on some days and some days you don't. This is all so important because we've all been misled when it comes to this. And I think maybe intentionally, because they don't want the government, they don't want the EPA, the FAA, they don't want us to be on their trail. They want people to say, oh, the trail I see in the sky right now is a nefarious, unmarked, undercover plane that is spraying me with pumps and pipes. And that gives them a free pass because you're not even looking at the real source of it, which happens to be commercial aviation by and large. Now, any plane that's flying through these ice supersaturated regions that has this kind of fuel, military planes have even worse, way worse. They have super high levels of aluminum, over 9,000 parts per million in JP8 fuel. We won't get too far into that right now, but any plane flying through, any jet flying through ice supersaturated regions in the troposphere are going to create these planes on certain days when the conditions are right in the sky. So this is a major problem, and guess what? We're taking this fight. We're fighting these trails. We want this to stop, and we are going. This is David versus Goliath, folks. But I'm a believer, and I know that God is going to help us. I know that he brought me into this cause. He's given me a passion and burning passion like David to go and slay this giant. And it's going to be hard. It's going to take a lot of guts. And guess what? We're going to do this. We're going to take it to court. We've already sent them a letter with all of the sign. It's a 30-page letter. It's not just a letter. It's a demand. It's a petition to explain what's going on, letting them know that we know what you're doing. We know what's happening, and we know that you know this, and you'd better fix it, or else we're going to take you to court. Okay. And that's what we're doing. So we're on the trail of the source of the trails in the sky. That sounds kind of funny, but hey, it's true. That's what we're on, the trail of the trails. So folks, I hope that you learned something today. I know it's a lot of information. Next week, if you'll come back, same time, same place, we're going to have a special guest on with us. But today, we just really wanted to go into a deep dive of exactly what it is that we're looking at, and what are we trying to do. We want a clean atmosphere, folks. We want our sun back. We want our beautiful skies back. We want clean air, clean food, right? So we're fighting for that. So thank you for joining us today. I'll see you next week.